welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night. Today I am joined by the fabulous Harlow James. She is the author of the Newberry Spring series that released yesterday for the audiobooks. They are amazing. If you have not listened to them, you really need to. And she's also the author of one of my favorite series, The Ladies Who Brunch, which is also available on Audible. And that series is phenomenal as well. So you will not go wrong with either of those. And you can binge them now because they're all available. So thank you so much for coming on my show today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me and inviting me.
Yes, and congratulations on the release yesterday.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be able to put my emotions into audio, and the response has been amazing. So I'm grateful. I'm really, really grateful. It's been a dream come true, and it's helped me reach new readers, so yeah. I'm great.
I loved the narrators for both the series, but I loved the Newberry Springs series. Like, they were great. They were perfect.
Yeah, Dane Anderson and Angelina Roca did phenomenal. Such a good job. Totally brought the stories to life. It was really fun to go back and relive them via audio, because it's a different experience. So yeah, I did a live last night with them on TikTok and got to talk to them a little bit about it and stuff, so that was fun.
Oh, that's really cool. I'll have to go and check it out. I loved the Everything He Couldn't, that book, their voices in that book.
Yes.
And the emotions in that book was holy cow. So I really liked that. I think that one's my favorite out of the three. I don't know. I like them all, but I'm a mom, so I really liked that one a lot. Yeah. So
that is probably one of my favorite books I've ever written, and it poured out of me. I wrote it in 4 weeks. And it was special, it just had these the mixture of tropes and both of their character arcs and the way that he showed up for her, and but that one's special. That one's definitely, I tell people, I'm you don't even have to read the first book to enjoy this one. I personally think you get the best experience with the entire series, but that book alone is a great introduction to my writing, I think.
He's the best book boyfriend.
Yes, he
is.
The
best, the best.
Although, I wrote a book, I just finished a book a couple weeks ago that hero might give Walker a run for his money.
Ooh, I can't wait to read it.
I'm excited for, it's in my new series. It's the third book in my new series that I just finished. So.
Oh, wonderful. I'll be looking out for that one. So, out of writing, now that you finished that, does new series you're on to, does writing energize you or does it make you tired?
A little bit of both, it's a roller coaster of emotions, and kind of energy. It's very exciting when you start a new book, and then once you get about a third of the way through, you're like, all right, here we go, because you can hopefully see the finish line. The end becomes really exhausting for me because I can see the end and I can feel it and I just want to get it out. And so I tend to hyper focus and kind of push myself a little bit at the end, take advantage of every writing opportunity that I have so I can get the story out of my head. And then I usually need about a week to decompress after I finish a book and just kind of let my mind rest. So it's a process for me. But I keep going and doing it, and I've written 27 books now, so it's not that bad.
Yes, and you're great at it. You definitely are you write beautifully. You paint such a picture and have such a way with words, so you entrap people to read them, and then they don't want to put them down, and they stay up way too late, in my case, listening to them. So now that you're finished with these two series and you're moving on to these new books, who's your favorite? All your books, who's the favorite that you've written for the male character,
really
female?
It just depends on the day. But the Ladies Who Brunch series will always hold a special place in my heart because writing that series completely changed my author career. And I put so much thought and time into those stories, and they were so female forward, and I thought that was so important and critical, and like something that you don't see a lot in the romance,
Yeah.
books, which, I mean, obviously, we're talking about HUD and we have all of these female characters and stuff, but the whole premise of that series was issues that we deal with as women. And so, there's just something really special and unique about that series that I love. And I will always, I will recommend people. I'm like, if you want a glance at my writing, this is where I would recommend to start. Um, so, but picking a favorite, it's hard. There's fan favorites. I love all of my characters for different reasons. Um, so it's really hard to
Are
do.
they like each a little bit of you, each different one, or is there one that's mainly like you're like, this is probably me if I were to write a character that's most like me?
Um, Charlotte was a lot of me. Charlotte, who's the female main character in Never Say Never, which is the first book in the Ladies Who Run series. There was a lot of personal elements to her that I put in, and part of her story, having that insecurity about, your body and timelines of, things and stuff like that. So that was very personal. I wrote a character in one of my very first series, my Emerson Falls series, in the very first book, Tangled. The main character's name is Olivia, and she's a math teacher, which is what my job is by day. So I, put a lot of myself into her in that respect. There's elements of her life and like her grandma and stuff is my grandma. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's always a piece of me that I put into my characters. But those two would probably be the ones that are the closest to
That's
who I am
wonderful.
as a person.
So yeah, I love Charlotte. That book, like that was the first book I ever got that was yours. Like that was my
Oh, okay.
introduction to you. And
Uh-huh.
I was laughing until I was crying in some of those scenes. Like it was so funny and then
Yes.
so
And then you
sad in
hear it on
another scene. And
audio.
then you're like,
So when you
yeah,
hear it on audio, it's like totally different.
yeah. So they're wonderful. So what would be your writing kryptonite, do you think? For you?
Um, well, I mean, what do you mean? Do you mean like a trope or a
Like if you're writing and then like something happens and it just totally will mess with you or something that you're just like I can't get past this, like it's not meant
yeah.
like that kind of thing.
Um, I have a pretty good instinct now about like how stories form in my head, I guess, and that's one of those things that comes with experience. And so, I will very quickly have this kind of like feeling like something's not right with this story. Like things aren't jiving, it's not going the way that I thought it would. So I kind of have a few things that I'll do. I'll go for a walk, or I'll walk away from the book for a day or two. Excuse me. And then I'll taking a shower sometimes is like it's so weird. I'll go in there and I'll just like, be washing my hair and thinking, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, bing, and like, oh, problem is solved. But I'm also like started books completely over. I've scrapped up to like 50,000 words of a book before and thrown it out. So it just kind of depends. I don't want to put out a book that I am not confident in and feel that is a reflection of my writing and my style and like what readers have come to expect from me. So if I get that gut feeling, I listen to it and I do what I can to work past it. And then, worst comes to worst, I will, ask one of my beta readers. I'll be like, hey, I'm struggling. Can you read this for me and see if you're picking up on, the same issues that I am and stuff. So I have a really amazing team of betas that help me a lot in my writing process. So I'll rely on them. But yeah, every book's different. Some are really easy and then some are really difficult and some change. I've had to change plot lines and stuff just because it was so
That's really great. It's good to have a good support system and be able to bounce off ideas for them and have that feedback with it not being like a judgment thing, and you can just be, hey, what do you think, and get that constructive feedback and be able to go forward with your writing. That's really good. It's good that you have that. I've talked to some authors where they're still like ironing out the ins and outs of that process. And so like learning to like let things go or take things the right way and different things. So that can be probably a struggle when you're first starting out. And
I used to hate deleting words. I was like, oh
yeah,
God, I wrote all these words, you know, but now I have a much easier time doing it, you know, like I'll be like, oh, okay, but it's not working. So take this out, remove it from the story, remove it from your thought process, read and see what comes out instead, you know, and so half the time that's the problem, you know, it's because you'll like write yourself into a corner and you don't really realize it, or the characters will take you into a corner, you know, and it's funny when authors say that, but other authors understand. Like, what do you mean you want to do this?
yeah.
You know? Yeah. So it's
So
important to learn that process.
yes, that's very true. And to be comfortable with change. I think that in this world where everyone's not comfortable with change, and then to have to like you said, scrap an entire book or like restart like
Yeah.
that definitely probably gets your creative juices flowing more though too, because you're more fluid and being open to things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
so when you're writing these stories, where are you getting your inspiration from?
Oh, um, it's everywhere, you know. Sometimes it will be like, oh, I haven't written that trope yet, so I will come up with an idea for a book. Um, and I write down all of my ideas. I put them in, you know, either like a notebook or I put them in a Word document and I'll go back to them later, you know, or I'll get an idea and I'm like, oh, that would be really good, you know, I'm like, stash it. Song music, a lot of times, you know, will paint a scene for me and I'll be like, oh, I want to incorporate that in a book, you know. Um, Stuff I see on the internet, articles I read, interactions that I have with people, you know. One of my friends told me a story. Um, my daughter soccer practice one day, and I was like, "Oh my God, can I put that in a book, please?" Like, because it was just hilarious. And so it's actually in my new book that's coming out in June. It's the story that she told me, you know. So it's everywhere, and it's funny when it happens too, because it's like a light bulb moment, you know, and you're like, "Oh yes, okay, that has to be in there."
That's
So it's
good.
fun. It's fun to discover it because you're never like you never know like where inspiration will strike.
So when you're writing, do you do more of like an outline process, or do you just kind of like let the story go and you just write it?
I am definitely more of a plotter than I am a pantser, is you know the technical term. I always have an outline. Especially in the beginning, I will usually outline the first, you know, 6 to 7 chapters, and then I try to have a really good idea of what the third act conflict is going to be. So that I know where I'm starting and where I'm headed, and then I kind of like let the middle fill itself in. So as things develop with the characters, as ideas come to me, I will make notes in my outline, and so my outline kind of like a living document, and I will go through it and just add the story on top of my outline, you know, and fill it in, and that's what I do. And it's not, you know, fancy, but it's what works for me. And as soon as I have ideas, I try to write them down or type them into the document so that I don't forget, because that happens too.
Yes. Yes. I kind of imagine like the technology now where you can chop in your phone and different things like
Mhm.
that is like a lifesaver for an author, because when you're like driving, something might pop in your head, you can't necessarily stop and write it down, but you can say
Yep.
it really quick and then have that uh saved for later.
Yes. Yeah. No, I've done that. I've written notes at stoplights too. And I scrambled in my purse and I write down a note on a newspaper or like a receipt, you know?
Uh-huh.
And then I always have a pen on me. I always have a pen on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So when you're writing, is this something you always wanted to do, or is it something that you just kind of fell into and decided one day I want to try my hand at writing?
I mean, I was always a strong writer, you know, as a student. And then, but I never wrote for fun, you know. I could bust out a research paper like no problem, you know, it wasn't like an issue for me. But creative writing was not something that I ever kind of saw myself doing, but I always kind of had an idea in the back of my head, like, I'd like to write a book one day, just to say, like, I wrote a book, like, that'd be cool. So I came into reading romance in 2018, right after my grandma died. I was having a really hard time, with my grief and stuff, and a friend of mine was like, "Man, you should try reading, because it's a great way to escape." And so I did, and I became just obsessed. Romance readers are voracious readers. Like we just want more and more and more. So that's kind of what happens. And then about a year later, I was like, you know what, like, I can do this. Like, I could write a book. And so I had an idea, and I wrote the story down, and it was unedited, and it was like very, very raw, but I researched self-publishing on Amazon, and I uploaded my stuff and printed out my book, because I wanted to hold it. Like, I wanted to hold it and be like, oh my God, like, I wrote this,
Yeah.
And then it became like an addiction, just like reading. I was like, well, now I want to write another one, now I want to write another one. And then I had all these characters, people talking to my head, and I was like, I had never had that before. I never had a creative outlet. I teach high school math by day, and I'm very type A and a little OCD. And so I'm very left brained. And that is how, like, my mind works. So to be able to tap into the right side of my brain and that creative, part of me that I didn't really know was there, it completely changed my world, it changed my life. So I feel joy now, when I write and when I get messages from readers that my book, resonated with them, or something I said, was powerful. And I get to provide that to other people now, that type of joy, which is amazing. And one of those feelings that I don't think will ever get old and I never take for granted. So it was not something I thought, at 36, almost 37, that I would be a romance author. Like, no way. But I'm so grateful that it did, because it's really changed my life. It's changed my life.
Yeah. I think I reached out to you after I finished the advance of the audiobook of Not as Planned, because that was about mom, and I totally like identified with her like hard days, and that me too at the beginning with like everything's going wrong, and she's just like, because I feel like a lot of moms feel that way, and a lot of the time they can feel really isolated, and like you just really opened it up that people like, no, we see you and it's okay, and don't worry. And
that one was raw. That was a very cathartic story to write.
It was cathartic to read. Also, like for me, like I cried through like that entire book in a good way, but I loved that book. Like it's like on my tops as a book because of that.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
It
seriously
was. And it's interesting now how writing does become that kind of cathartic process for me. If there's something that I'm dealing with, I'm thinking like, how could I put this in a book? And, so that other people could connect to this too. Because we are a human, and, at the end of the day, we're all looking for a connection. And, knowing that we're not alone. And so there's something very powerful with seeing yourself and parts of yourself or thoughts that you have, portrayed in fiction, but that came from a real life person. And so you're like, holy crap, like, I'm not the only one, like, I'm not the only one that feels this way. So yeah, there's something really powerful in that.
Yeah. So going back to, you were talking about being a self-published author, what is something, like, if you could go back in time and tell yourself, what you know now, go back and say, hey, to your beginning roots of your process, what would you tell yourself?
That I wish I would have treated it as a business a lot sooner than I did. I treated it as a hobby for a really long time because that's what it was for me, and I don't regret that. But I wish I would have thought of it as more of a business mindset, because that's when things really started to change for me, and that's when I really started to understand, marketing and things like that. Completely elevated life, my income and my return on my investment and stuff. So, obviously I do this because I love it, but you invest a lot of money into self-publishing. You know, it's very expensive between covers and editing, and you know, audio is very expensive. I put a lot of money into audio in the last
Yeah.
15 months, you know. So and I'm happy to say that it was a worthwhile investment. You know, I'm very proud and happy with how things have done so far. But as I wish I would have known a little bit more. You know, I learned as I went, which there's something that's very beautiful about that too. And I wish more people would understand is that sometimes you have to learn by doing. You can't just absorb information and think that, oh, okay, well, now I know what I'm doing. You're not going to know until you get out there and you actually do it yourself. So, and this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's very, very rare to get that overnight success, you know, to have that viral TikTok and, you know, or whatever to change your career. And other authors are not your competition. They're your support system. You know, when somebody is doing really well, I cheer and I, you know, shout and I try to encourage, you know, and be that sounding board because, I mean, as women, we have enough hatred and competition among each other as it is put on us by society. Like, why do we need to do that
Yes.
in a community where, you know, we're all here for the same reason? Um, everybody can have their moment. There is space for everyone. You know,
Yes.
so I wish I would have learned that more in the beginning, and you know, but now I'm like, you know, we're all winning. When someone wins, we're all winning, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's one thing I love about the community. Not only like the fans or like the readers, they're really supportive because we like we talked about earlier, we just devour everything, like anything, like we want to feel those emotions and we want to feel like that escape, but also, you know, have something that says, oh, they went through that too. But
Mhm.
the authors, like there's so many authors that like push each other up and read each other's books and are on
Mhm.
each other's beta teams and they're so supportive. Like it's like such a awesome thing to see
Mhm.
all of the indie authors and how they just lift each other up and they're just have each other's backs. It's really, really cool. That's one thing
Yeah,
I
I
love
agree.
about it.
There's been a lot of authors that I've reached out to, you know, with questions and you know, looking for advice or just whatever, and people have been so forthcoming and receptive, you know, generous and genuine, and um, it's amazing. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So you were talking about you got started into the reading in 2018. Who are some of your favorite authors that are your kind of like go-to reads?
Uh, I absolutely love anything that Megan Quinn writes. She is just the queen of rom-com. Um, And it's such a sweet human. And when I met her at Book Bonanza, I cried. Honestly,
That's
oh my God.
awesome.
You know, yeah, I had like a fangirl moment. I was there as a reader, you know, but yeah, that was really cool. I will read anything that Debbie Perry writes. I think she's phenomenal. Um, I'm a huge fan of Melanie Harlow and Corinne Michaels. And gosh, I mean, there's so many others that like I can't even think off the top of my head. I'd have to go and like look back at my
Yeah.
Goodreads, you know. Like,
Yeah.
those who I read. Oh, V. Keelan and Penelope Ward. You know,
Mhm.
like I'll read anything those two write. But I wish I had more time to read now. That's the thing. Like when I started writing, my reading time.
Yeah.
And so now, like, I'm a little bit more selective with what I read, but I do take breaks between writing books. Um, I see somebody.
No worries.
Well, okay, nope, come on away.
Oh, it went away.
Um, I, s- I take breaks in between writing books. So,
Mhm.
and during that time, I try to read and like catch up on stories that have been out. I haven't had a chance to devour.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Ever-growing TBR.
Yes. Oh, we'll all die with TBRs.
Oh,
You
yes.
just need to accept that at this point.
Yes. I saw an Instagram post where this girl was like, she literally looked like she was crying, and she's like realizing that I will never finish my TBR. And I was
Yep.
like, that is so true because
Yeah,
we
it
won't.
is very true.
So, what is when you're writing? What's the most difficult for you with writing the opposite sex point of view? Do you struggle with that, or is it come pretty naturally?
I love writing the male TOE. But I have had reviews, which I'm trying to be better about not checking my reviews, because in the beginning it was really, really, really hard because you pour so much of yourself into these stories, and then to have somebody criticize them, you're like, oh my God, I'm horrible, I'm like, I should
Yeah.
quit. So I try really hard now not to review as much, but I've had reviews where people say that Hell as the Man was written by a woman, like that the male character was written by a woman. So I'm like, well, yeah, it was written by a woman. I mean,
Mm.
and it's funny because I'll talk to my husband and he'll be like, men don't think like that. Men don't, talk like that. That I said, exactly. That's why we like the fictional one better. Like, come
Yes.
on. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I enjoy writing the male POV, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job of establishing a Harlow James male main character kind of vibe at this point, like what you're gonna get from me.
Yeah.
I have a couple of outliers, but for the most part, yeah, I enjoy writing. In fact, in the book I just wrote and finished a couple weeks ago, I wrote more in the male point of view than I did in the female point of view, which I think
Hmm.
is a first for me.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is because he's narrating the book. And so I was like, I want to hear this man's voice. So
Yes. That
I
always
wrote a
makes it
lot.
great.
Yeah.
So when will
Yeah.
that book be coming out?
Oh, not until January.
Okay. So we got some
Yeah.
time.
So, yeah, we got
Got
some
some
time
time
for
to
that one.
wait.
With doing all of these audio releases, I was able to get ahead on my writing schedule, which has been such a blessing. Oh my God, I feel very accomplished, one, which my type A personality loves, but two, it's allowing me to do simultaneous audio release for this entire series.
Oh, that's
So I
wonderful.
will, yeah, so I will have audio available on release day for all the 5 books in this series.
I can't wait. I love
Yeah.
that. I mean, like we talked about, I'm a mom and I have a
Yep.
business and I can't always sit and read the books, but
Yep.
I love listening to them. That is the way that I get through a lot of my books. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that you come out with audios because I get to enjoy them.
Mhm.
So what is some of the hardest scenes you've had to write?
I wrote a book in my very first small town romance series. It's the 4th book, and it's about a widower, and he was a sheriff, and he got called on scene of an accident where his wife died,
Oh,
and I was sobbing while I was writing that scene. Um, that whole book, I wrote it in 2 weeks because I had to put myself into a mental space that I didn't want to be in, but like I kind of had to. Like losing my husband is one of my worst fears, like being
yeah.
all right, so I wrote a widower, excuse me. Being a widow is one of my worst fears. So there's a lot of like flashbacks in that book, and some very emotional scenes. So that one was probably the hardest books that I've written. And then there's times where it's not even just the sad stuff, but it's scenes with like a ton of characters. So
Mhm.
it's like parties, or like things like that. And I'm like, oh God, okay, so who's talking right now? So you kind
Yeah.
of have to keep track of everything. I remember when I was talking to Amanda Ratmore when after Never Say Never came out on audio, and she was like, every time there was a brunch scene, she's like, I had to like prepare myself, because she was differentiating her voice for 4 different women.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I tried writing those. I thought it was a challenge. So it just depends. Like I said, some books are easy and some books are a little bit more difficult, but definitely emotional scenes are rough, and when there's lots of characters involved. And then I don't know, the more I get into my writing journey, the more I hate writing scenes. Like I get like we get to them, I'm like, oh, all right. I gotta get in, this because like for me, when I start writing one, I don't like to stop until it like done, So
Yeah. So on the counter of that question, what's your favorite scenes to write?
Um, anything involving comedy, like anything involving something happening, there's the dog biscuit scene, and now's the time with Jeffrey and all the guys where they eat the dog biscuits. It's probably one of my favorite. It's probably one of my favorite scenes that I've like ever written.
I was dying when I read that. I was in my son's like appointment. I was at speech therapy and I was in the waiting room and that scene came on and I just started busting out laughing and all these people turned to look at me and I was like, sorry.
Yeah.
But it was so hilarious.
Oh gosh. I know what's funny is that came from a real life like situation. We were in Jamaica for my sister's wedding and I was in the middle of writing the book when we went to Jamaica. And they put these, I guess they were soap, and they were like little, I don't remember what the shape was, but it was like a soap. And my husband thought it was food. And so she like bit into it, and then he was like, and then he like started spitting it out, and oh god, we were all dying of laughter. And so when I was, headed toward that part in the book, I was like, oh, I'm gonna use that like that going into that the puppy palooza, whatever the heck it was.
And
scene.
He's just such a great character. And like every single book, he just puts his foot in his mouth, and it's like, I can't believe he just said that. I can't believe he just did that.
Right. Yes. Oh, I loved writing him. Yeah. Loved writing him. And then giving him his own story. That was totally for the readers. Like people would message me all the time, they're like, you need the book, And so, I didn't put his book on audio because it's really like, it doesn't get as much read through. Like a lot of people are invested in the women, and they don't care as much about Jeffrey, but it was more like my ARC team. I was like, oh my god, like he needs a book, and so I really wrote it for them.
He totally needed a book, and it was amazing.
He did, yes. And writing him as a hero, and like that main character energy of like the goofy guy, you don't get that as much, know, like so. And I married the goofy guy. My husband he constantly laughs, and so there's a lot of my husband and Jeffrey.
Well, he's just such a great character, and like even though he's like a goofy guy, and he's like so there for his friends, and he's like, if you need him, I'm there. And so I was really glad that he got his own book. Like it was so sweet. It was great, like to be able to like see him happy and see him settled because he tries so hard. Yeah. He's so cute.
You did.
So with this process, doing mainly back-to-back audios, what is some of the things you've learned from doing that? Like with picking who you're going to have read your books, like that must be daunting.
Yeah. Well, I had no audio experience prior to this. I didn't listen to audiobooks. And so, but I had a lot of readers who did. So I reached out to my readers and I was like, who are the narrators that you like, and I reached out to a couple of really big audio listener accounts, and I'm like, look, this is, I want to step into this, but I want to do it right. And, a lot of them are like, the narrator's what sells the book. It's not the author, it's the narrator, because people want to hear so-and-so's voice. And so that was kind of like the driving decision for me, So, but then I would get reader recommendations, listener recommendations, like, oh, so-and-so would be really good for this character. So-and-so does a really great, can feel like, I think Teddy Hamilton was absolute perfection for Damien.
Well, I love him.
And that he nailed the comedy, and then him as Jeffrey too was fantastic, so yeah, a lot of it was from readers. And then I was listening, to samples, and I was looking at popular names and people that I was like, okay, yeah, I could listen to this person, and then I started listening to audiobooks on my own, and but I had to research a lot of stuff I didn't know. I didn't understand how things worked. I work with a production company. I've worked with One Night Stand Studios, which is experience. Erin Spencer over there is fantastic. And we've had some learning curves, but she's been really patient with me. And but I'm super proud of everything that, I've I've invested money into. And I think that it was the right, and I marketed them as their own releases. That was one big thing that another author told me. She was like, you need to treat your audio as a release just like you would any other book, because that is the way that you're going to make your money back on it, the quickest that you can. So yeah, I attacked it very strategically, and I'm very happy with the results. And then doing the box set for Newberry Springs was a gamble, because people are getting 3 books for the price of 1, so theoretically, like from a business standpoint, you're losing money. But I felt like it was the best way to get like the entire series experience, because it was only 3 books and because they were brothers. And I love Dean's voice. I found him on TikTok and I slid into his DMs and I was like, hey, I have a 3-book series. They're all brothers. I think you would be perfect for it. Would you be interested? And then Angelina has been on my radar too. So to get her to narrate those 3 books was amazing. And again, I think and a great choice, a great casting choice, for the characters. So
Yeah.
it's been an experience for sure. Like I have learned a lot. But I'm just like really grateful that readers have been so receptive and so supportive, and and allowing me to do more moving forward.
So you're going to keep doing more audiobooks as you go on forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's about accessibility too, I mean, there's a lot of people who can't read like with their eyeballs, and but I understand a lot more, the busyness. Like I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and then I'm an author, and so there's sometimes where listening to an audiobook is the only way I'm going to get reading in, and so like I get it. And you need that just like we need reading to escape. The audio is the same thing. So audiobooks is reading. There you go.
It is. It totally is. Because like
Yes.
for someone, so my eyesight has gone in the years I've gotten older, like where I can't read very long without it getting really blurry, and I love to read. So for a person that is like that, it's imperative that we have another mode of being able to read, and so that's why I love it. Plus the time, because you don't always have time to sit and read.
And then like selfishly for me, I was not about it. I was like, "Oh, I just don't know like how I feel about somebody reading to me, and da 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 da." But then hearing my stories come to life, selfishly, that's what I love, because I get to hear somebody else's interpretation of the story, and reliving it through audio is totally different experience than that, reading with your eyeballs. So there's a little bit of a selfish aspect to that too.
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, I really want to hear so-and-so read this scene.
Yes. They were all great. You did great choices for everyone that you had read all the stories. They were all like perfect, and they did such a phenomenal job with the books that you really get hooked on them. And like I said, that's how I found you, was listening to the first Ladies Who Brunch. So I absolutely adore them. So I'm excited to see what's next for you and be there supporting you, because I love all the books I've read. I've loved them. So
I can't wait for this new series. I'm so excited. I'm so giddy. My beta readers are just like, every book gets better and better. Like, we can't wait for everybody to get this, because I have 3 books now that nobody's read.
Oh wow.
So, so it's really hard for me to keep secrets, even keep surprising you. But yeah, so I'm very excited, and I appreciate your support, and I appreciate your time, helping spread the word, because I think reader recommendations are just always like number one, of anything. If somebody, especially if you know your reader friends, and you're like, oh, you would like this book, that's a really powerful marketing tool, but it's not, at the same time, it's just putting out good stories and having people fall in love with them. I mean, that's the goal, ultimately.
And a lot of things are word of mouth. So like I have an Etsy shop, and most of my traffic is from word of mouth. Someone got something that I sell or had made for them, and then they talk about it. And that's the same with books. Like I'm a part of a book club, and the 4 of us are constantly like, hey, did you read this book? Hey, did you read this book? Like right before I got on with you, I had like 7 messages. And I'm like, who's writing me? I go on there, look, and they're talking about a new book. So that's the best way to get it out, because then it's authentic and people are actually like, no, this is good. It's not just you guessing to decide if a book is good or not. So well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was so great talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better and putting more of you behind the books that I love so much. So it was really great. And I really appreciate you taking your time every day to come on.
No problem. Anytime. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Of course. So look out for her new series. But if you have not read The Ladies Who Brunch or the Newberry Springs series, definitely check it out. So they're both available on several platforms, Audible and Kindle.
Audible for the audio, and then all of my books are in KU, during Kindle Unlimited on.
All right. Well, you definitely have lots to add to your TBR, but I would bump them up to the top. So, all right. Well, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.